Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton right here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's episode. Hey, on today's episode, special conversation teed up. We're going to be talking with a self-described supply chain evangelist. How about that? An individual that has a strong passion for learning and exploring new things. Our guest, who we've had a lot of experience and a lot of fun with on our live streams and across social, our guest is amongst the newest members of the global supply chain workforce and is working towards a, quote, realization of a smarter, autonomous, and hyper-connected supply chain. So with that said, let's welcome in Dhairya Patel, a supply chain planning analyst intern with Inquizity. Dhairya, how you doing?
Hi, Scott. Great to be on the show. Thanks for inviting.
Absolutely. Well, it's overdue. You've been on our short list of folks. We've really enjoyed the POV you've dropped in our live streams and our social interactions. And clearly, you know, it's amazing how much you can pick up just from digital interactions these days, but your passion for supply chain comes screaming through. So it's great to sit down with you for a few minutes here today.
Yes, indeed.
So Dhairya, let's start from the top. Before we get into the heavy lifting, let's learn more about you. So tell us, where did you grow up, and give us a few stories about your upbringing.
Yes. So basically, I grew up in the northwestern part of India called Gujarat. So this particular state is particularly famous for hosting the world's largest stadium.
Wow.
In terms of capacity.
How, roughly how many people?
It's around 1.5 lakh people.
Wow.
Yes.
Man, Guinness Book World Record. Holy cow. So that's where you grew up. So tell us more.
Yeah. And another milestone is like we have the world's tallest statue in our state. The statue which is even taller than the New York City's Statue of Liberty. So that's two key milestones that describe from where I come from. And yeah.
Love that. So, you know, growing up in what sounds like a wonderful world city, it's got to be a pretty special place to come from. And as you meet people to tell, you know, share about your city when you're abroad, huh?
Yes, indeed.
So, all right. So tell us about your family? Are you the oldest? Are you the youngest? You know, what'd your mom and dad do? Tell us more about that.
So I'm the only child, and my father, he works as an electrical manager at a firm, as a private firm. And my mother is a homemaker, basically raised as a single child, being loved by my parents. And right from my childhood, I was a bit into the academics as a keen learner. Apart from academics, I love reading books. I love exploring new places, trying new cuisines, and also I go on treks sometimes.
Okay.
So I love spending time with nature.
Love that. All right. So I've got an extra question for you. So if you think about the mix of traits you've gotten from your father and from your mother, what's one trait that you track back to your father, and what's one trait you definitely got from your mother? How would you answer that?
That's hard to quantify, but but I would say that kindness is something which I got as a trait from my mother. She's a very kind individual, and I learned from her to respect other people's viewpoint, to extend the helping hand, and to give back to the community. And my father is a very pragmatic person. So being pragmatic at all stages of life is something that I imbibe from as a key trait from his side.
What a wonderful combination. We need so much of both of those, all of those traits in global business. And I appreciate you entertaining that question. All right. So let's talk about, one of our favorite questions is the why, right? Simon Sinek has made that famous and for good reason. So I'd love to, Daria, I'd love to ask you, what was your why for wanting to work in the global supply chain space?
So I was first introduced to the domain of supply chain during my bachelor's uh, when I took certain courses related to the field of supply chain. But I had a very limited view of supply chain, where a supply chain was restricted as being operation research, where you model and you derive based on your modeling assumptions, you arrived at an optimal features. But as in when I entered into the industry, I was fortunate enough to work for the initial years after my bachelor's in the capital good industry, where I became acquainted with the execution part of the supply chain. And
Execution, one of our favorite
yes,
aspects in supply chain, right? Really making it happen. That's what supply chain is known for, right?
yes,
So,
indeed.
so it sounds like that execution side, did it really cultivate even a greater love for the industry?
Yes, because when you view supply chain at the more granular level, at the operational level, how the workers and how each and every person who is in the value chain, he works synchronously with each other in order to derive value for the entire organization. That's when you realize that how the supply chain works as a backbone of a particular organization and how it serves to be a competitive advantage for a particular organization. So that's when I realized or found my passion for supply chain.
I love that. As you're describing that, the word ecosystem comes to mind, right? And it truly, I know
Yes.
that's been applied a number of different ways beyond the traditional literal definition, but these days it is a global ecosystem, right? Where everyone's got something at stake, from the consumer all the way upstream to the earliest raw material provider. And that's one of my favorite aspects about supply chain, because it's a true global community,
Right.
and everyone's got something at stake. So I love that. I love your why, Daria. It makes so much sense to me. No wonder you are a supply chain evangelist. I can see you at a pulpit now preaching supply chain to the masses. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about, you're going to be in our neck of the woods in the months ahead, right? As you're going to be venturing to Atlanta and attending Georgia Tech, just around the corner. Tell us more about what you're going to be doing there, and why did you choose Georgia Tech?
So very exciting to be at Georgia Tech in the coming months, to be in Atlanta. Georgia Tech, especially in the is a very renowned institute, especially for masters in industrial engineering. The course that I'm going to be pursuing, it has been consistently ranked as the first in the US news rankings for the consecutive last 30 years. Not just ranking wise, but the professors and the community at Georgia Tech is so much experience in supply chain. They are in fact the pioneers in certain domains of supply chain. And that's where I want to learn as much as possible from my peer community as well as the professors at Georgia Tech, and extend or add more to my own profile and grow more in the supply chain domain.
Love that. And I would add to that. We've rubbed elbows with the fine folks in a number of different ways at Georgia Tech over the 15 or so years I've been in the Atlanta area. And not only are they one of the top ranked industrial engineering school, but they're also the largest industrial engineering school in the States. And at the time, this was, I think, my data is about 2 years old, perhaps, but I bet it's around the same. They are more than double the size of the second ranked program, which I think was either Michigan or Michigan State. But
Yes.
regardless, fine institution, and looks like they're getting another wonderful current and future leader in Dhairya Patel. So now when you come to Atlanta, we're going to have to break bread together, and we're going to have you into the studio with us. And I want to keep our finger on the pulse of your studies and your POV. So is that a deal?
Yes,
Is that a
definitely.
deal?
Looking forward to it.
We are too. Okay. So let's shift gears. I want to talk about Inquisity. Inquisity is where you work now as a supply chain planning analyst intern. So tell us first about the company.
Yes. So Inquisity is basically a supply chain planning business automation solutions provider, where we provide planning solutions to enterprises in various domains, in various industry wide, right from my retail to my pharmaceutical to my tire industry. And because supply chain, as you know, is omnipresent, and each and every industry requires planning, each and every industry requires management of its resources. And that's where Inquisity comes into place, where we offer planning solutions in the form of master production planning, as well as scheduling, demand forecasting solutions, replenishment planning solutions, and a bunch of more, or if I would rather call an end-to-end planning solution on our platform known as Data Savvy.
Mm,
So that's what Inquisity is all about.
love it. True end-to-end planning. If we have
Right.
not learned a thing or 1,000 things about planning in the last 18 months, I don't know if we've learned anything, right? And planning continues to evolve. We as you
Yes.
might imagine, we talk a lot about planning here, and it's fascinating just how much more data and how much better we can get at proactive planning these days, and we're going to have to in the months ahead versus where we were even 5 or 6 years ago. It truly is amazing to plan and supply chain during the information age, isn't it? All right. So speaking of planning, let's talk about your role. So what do you do, and what's your favorite aspect of your role?
So talking about my role at Inquisity, I'm currently at the client-facing role, where we go to the client location, interact with the clients, understand their business needs, identify the gaps in their processes, try to resolve those gaps, bridge those gaps, and propose the solutions or bridge those gaps with the solutions offered by Inquisity in order to improve their process efficiency as well as add to their bottom line and the top line.
Um, it's got to be pretty rewarding to be in a position to have that kind of practical impact, taking a page from your
Right.
father, right? I'm a big pragmatic thinker as well. We talk a lot about, we have a bunch of fun around the fact that I once gave my current wife, my former, I think we were early in our dating, or maybe it was the first Valentine's Day when we were married, but she had told me that she didn't have an umbrella. I dropped her off somewhere and she didn't, she was in the rain and she was running in. And so naturally for Valentine's Day, the practical person I am, I give her an umbrella. That did not go over very well. But long story short, to be in a position, especially, this early in your career where you can have an impact on not just the top line, but the bottom line, and help folks, help organizations better navigate through these incredibly challenging times. That's got to be really gratifying, where you are right now, huh?
Yes, it's a lot of learning because every client has a unique challenges that they face. Every industry has unique challenges that they face. So how to implement your solutions, customize or tailor to their particular needs, and how to really make an impact and drive value for their organization is some of the things that I am fortunate enough to experience at this particular stage of my career.
All right. So before I ask you about some of the ways that the global supply chain profession is evolving, l- clearly you're working in a lot of different sectors, or at least you're exposed to a lot of different sectors across industry. Is there one that is emerging as a sector that really intrigues you and kind of captures your attention? Is there one sector out there that really strongly interests you?
So if I were to pick one sector or rather say one dimension of the industry that I believe is going to grow in the coming years is something the returns management is believe is something that I would bet on because there is in this rise of e-commerce with over 20% rise year on year. The returns actually form a huge part. They almost account for around 30% of your e-commerce, the returns. And therefore managing those returns and establishing or planning for reverse logistics in order to reduce your costs, in order to deliver a better customer experience is something that many startups or many companies in the supply chain are banking their bets on. One such startup that I come across is Reverse Logics, uh, where they are in fact implementing solutions, cloud-based solutions for the return management, for the reverse logistics of the return, and they are claiming to have a direct impact on 25 to 30% improvement in customer experience and reduction in the cost. So I believe moving forward, this will be a key area where I believe the industry is going to grow and evolve.
Agreed. Returns management is a really interesting space. Reverse logistics is a really interesting space, and it seems like here as e-commerce continues to explode, and and there's no slowdown, in sight. We all love the convenience of e-commerce across the globe. It seems like many retailers have cracked the code on the returns experience for the consumer or transactionally. But as we both know, one of the biggest challenges out there is how can we, in a sustainable manner, process these returns and get as much goodness out of what is brought back safely, right, and transparently back into the marketplace so that it can be reused or better yet, for the products that maybe are returned and they can't be reused, how can we reinvent and re-engineer how they're developed so they can truly be recyclable?
Right.
Planning, what do they call it? Basically planning for circularity. There's a phrase that's yes. And how can we bake circularity into product design? I think it's going to be a big challenge in the years to come, because you want to, as we both know, you want to balance where the consumer sees value in the product itself with how can we design for maximum and optimize circularity. There's a constantly evolving middle line there. The balance.
There's a trade-off.
Yes, big trade-off. But the cool thing is that consumers are more and more valuing all of those efforts, and of course, sustainability initiatives in a way that has never been seen in the global marketplace prior to. So, if the consumer's on your side, you're gonna make progress, right?
Yes.
All
We've
right.
seen that with Unilever and P&G. So
Agreed.
they are banking their interest. You see the Unilever's sustainability initiative of achieving carbon positive by 2030. So that's like a benchmark for all other industry leaders to follow.
Agreed. They're setting the bar. So speaking of this, as we've already referenced, the global supply chain profession, the craft, as Greg White puts it, is rapidly evolving. Global business, the whole landscape is rapidly evolving. If you had to pick just one element, one dynamic out of this rapidly evolving ecosystem, to steal our earlier phrase, what's one thing that really captivates you?
So as we have seen that in these times of gig economy, where your Uberization and your Airbnbs and Ubers and all those where they offer the subscription as a service, supply chain is also evolving to offer your software as a service, infrastructure as a service. And therefore, I've seen a lot of companies which are betting their stakes on cloud-based platforms that are enabling digital transformation across the organizations and delivering real-time visibility and value for them, which helps them to make quicker and efficient and effective decisions at the point when they are encountering certain disruptions or when they are managing their risks.
So certainly better decision making is becoming, and better and faster decision making is becoming more of the. It's become more capable, right? Folks have a lot more capability when it comes to making faster and better decisions based on a variety of different factors across global supply chain. Some folks still, and Dhairya, I'd love to get your feedback here. Some folks still are not geared towards making decisions. They don't want to be in the the one in the room making the decisions. Tell me about you. You strike me as someone that not only enjoys making decisions today, but you're going to enjoy making even bigger decisions as your career evolves. Is that accurate?
Yes, indeed. Like I would like to be on the decision-making roles. I would like to be crafting the strategy for an organization, be in the room, uh, put out the points, discuss on the points, and then make faster, quicker decisions with based on facts and data. That's what I want to be in a future.
Wonderful. And win a lot, right? Like your cricket team. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
And I'm going to circle back. We didn't talk about the cricket on the front end. I'm going to circle as we start to close here in a minute. I want to pick your brain about cricket because I bet there's a lot of folks like myself that weren't real familiar about some of the basics of that very popular global game. So beyond all that you've shared, and we've kind of talked about some big meaty subjects thus far, but beyond, is there one thing that we haven't addressed yet that you're really paying a lot of attention to, from a global business standpoint? What else would that be?
So if I were to describe that what organizations need to plan for, we have seen the recent pandemic and the recent disruptions caused by the pandemic. Also, we came across this study by McKinsey that says that disruption is bound to occur every 3.7 years. And therefore, companies need to start investing in resilient supply chains. They need to design their networks in an agile manner. They need to focus on digital collaboration with their suppliers, with their partners, and make them equal stakeholders in decision making. And therefore, they need to establish supply chain control towers. They need to go for cloud-based platforms that will help them, that will guide them in order to make real efficient decisions. And if I were to say like there is a great potential for leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities to derive predictive insights and analytics to predict the disruption before it occurs, and therefore you can have your responses ready in order to mitigate those unintended consequences that might occur as a result of disruption. And therefore, if companies need to survive in this time of VUCA, which is the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity world, then they need to start investing in resilient supply chains. That's the one message that I would like to put out in the community.
Mm. You shared a lot there. I want to go back to one of your earlier comments in that answer, which is working with your suppliers as equal stakeholders in especially big decisions. And I think that's when I think about my time earlier in the manufacturing industry, which quite some time ago, and I think about some of the observations I had when it comes to how us at the time as a supplier, where our seat at the table or where our seat was not at the table with some of the larger companies that we supplied, and how that leverage was used, and how in many of these cases we were excluded from these big decisions, and in some cases, I don't want to paint too broad a brush, but in some cases you're pounded down. We need 10% less in pricing. We got to find a way, and if you could meet it, you rewarded, and if you couldn't, you stood to lose business or had other consequences. And it really, and this wasn't every relationship, but a couple of those just it created this, leadership in that manner created a really distrust, right? And it didn't create much incentive, as weird as that may sound. And it's been really neat to see how, as we've interviewed more and more folks, from Sandra McQuillan and Quentin Roach with Mondelez International and many others, that view their suppliers almost as much, or maybe even on equal terms, as they view their consumer. And
Right.
it really, if I'm a supplier, those are the folks I want to work with, right? Because they're going to find a way for all organizations, all upstream and downstream, to do good business and serve the consumer. That really, That's one of the things that really gets my juices going about where supply chain is kind of headed. And we see a lot
Hmm.
of that today. I think we'll see a lot more of that in the months and years to come. Does that resonate with you? Any thoughts about that?
Yes, indeed. Like making suppliers and equal parties or equal stakeholders in the decision making process is a great step to move towards the realization of a resilient supply chain, because you need your suppliers to be ready to accommodate for any demand changes whenever a disruption is occurring. And you can build that trust only when you interact with supplier on an equal footing. And
Mm.
I believe that moving forward, as the new millennial workforce is going to gradually seep into the supply chain domain, new practices are going to come in place and the old status quo will be challenged. And that's where our community has to play a big role, where we need to educate individuals who are entering into the supply chains domain about how to approach supply chain in these volatile times.
Love that. And that's where the gains are going to be. We challenge these long held status quos or some of the new held status quos, right? Uh, that's where some of the most important change is going to take place. And really, frankly, that could be said outside of supply chain too, societal change and
Right.
global business change. So we've got some big, you know, there's always big topics to tackle and challenges to tackle in global business, but we've got some big ones right now and certainly around the corner that are yet to be foreseen, right? That you'll be leading us through, Dhairya. So I want to look back. So we've been kind of focused on the current state and what's to come and some of those trends. I want to look back now because, knock on wood, we all hope that we're getting firmer and firmer into the post-pandemic period. It's been, different parts of the world are in different spots, but what's one big eureka moment that you've had as we have navigated through this global pandemic? What's been one big lesson learned, Dhairya?
Like Winston Churchill has a popular saying that never waste a crisis. If you are in the midst of a crisis, never waste a crisis. Is in fact a perfect opportune moment for the organizations to capitalize and to like capitalize and improve on the shortcomings or any particular gaps that they had in their processes. And this is a continuous improvement process. So I believe that real time visibility is something that companies should look forward, because we see in the light of the recent disruptions such as the Suez Canal blockage crisis, or we might say because of the COVID-19 pandemic. When the disruption initially occurred in the Wuhan, there were research shows that around 938 of the Fortune 1000 companies had their tier 2 suppliers in uh, Wuhan, and therefore there was this reverberations or ripple effects felt for the organizations worldwide where they
Mm.
face the raw material shortages. And therefore, it is imperative that you have your real-time visibility on where your production is occurring or where are suppliers are where are you sourcing from. That helps you plan effectively and plan better for any upcoming disruptions.
Well said. Very well said. So you learned some big lessons from the pandemic, but one of the things you mentioned there is real time visibility, and I'll tell you, that's like Bitcoin. It seems like the value of that just taking off every hour, with good reason. So a lot of good stuff there. Hey, as we wrap, oh, one more thing before we talk about cricket. I want to circle back to your mother and some of the traits that she bestowed on you. Doing good, helping the community, helping others, being kind. Do you see any newfound lessons in those areas as a result of the pandemic?
So I observe that as a community, we have in fact been more supportive and been more kind in these tumultuous times. I've seen many organizations and many NGOs which are working together day and night to uh, be to deliver food packages, to deliver uh, nutritional nutritional milk to the destitute children, especially in India where we had a lockdown. So there was this particular time when there were many migrant workers who were continuously walking on foot for almost as 500 to 800 miles, and we saw many individuals coming together, coming forward, and supplying them food and other essentials. And at that particular time, I felt that as a community, we have grown more kind, and we have become sensitive to each other's pain, and we have felt and empathized with others. And that is something that has greatly impressed me because it was a particularly a very negative time where a tiny shred of positivity was needed to uplift our moods. And it is great that people are coming forward.
Agreed. It's energizing. It's nourishment for the soul in terms of the levels of empathy and folks doing good and giving forward during these challenging times. It helps bolster us to get through a lot of the bad days that we've all experienced. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective there. Now, I want to talk about cricket for a minute because I bet I'm sure we've got some listeners that are like me and have no idea how the game works. They've seen it, probably pictures and whatnot. So the Indian Premier League is the league, is the major leagues of cricket, right?
Yes.
All right. So it appears that the Royal Challengers Bangalore are currently leading the league, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They're currently at the top of the table.
Yes, they're 3-3. How about that? Real-time visibility into cricket league standings. Now, which one's your favorite team again?
Mine is Chennai Super Kings.
Super Kings. All right. What's their acronym?
CSK.
So they're number 2.
Yes.
The Chennai Super Kings. They are number 2 at 3-2-1. So they're nipping on the heels. How many games roughly make up a cricket season? How many games will these teams play?
So like there are around 8 teams which are playing in the Indian Premier League. So each team will play with each other. There's a round robin type of an arrangement. So around 56 matches, and then we have this finales and semi-finales, and then we move on to the finals. So it's like a cricket festival right now in India.
I love it. A cricket festival. So about 56 games. And let's talk about just the mechanics of cricket, because I learned some things on the pre-show. For example, much like baseball, for our listeners that have seen the baseball game, you've got a pitcher that uses a cricket ball, right?
Yes.
And they fling that towards the batter. And is that what you call it, the batter in cricket?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like much of a baseball bat, but it's like a flat surface bat rather than a round one.
Yes. And then behind home in baseball, what would be called home plate, behind the batter are several stumps. Is that right?
Yes.
And what I didn't know until Dhairya told me on the front end is if the cricket ball hits a stump, the batter is out.
Yes.
So you've got to protect the stump. Is that right?
Yes, you got to protect the stumps and you're going to hit the ball at the same time.
Very challenging, very challenging. And that ball, well, just like we see in Major League Baseball, pitchers are throwing it 100 miles an hour. Now, you bringing it home to you, because you've played cricket quite a bit, and I think you told us that you were a much better batter than you were like a fielder. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. I like to hit the ball out of the boundary for sixes.
So is that like a home run in baseball?
Yes. So if you hit it in the baseball, it's a home run. In cricket, if you hit it outside the boundary, it's called a six. You get 6 runs for that.
Okay, a 6. Man, learn something new every day. Well, it's really cool and rewarding to sit down and finally have a face-to-face in this, as face-to-face as we get here lately, with Dhairya Patel. We really have enjoyed, Greg and I and the whole team gotten a kick out of what you've shared on our live streams and how we've interacted on social. I always feel really good about where global business is headed with incredible leaders and people like you coming into industry. You're already here, but you know what I mean. As you progress from your your current intern role, and you progressed through the master's program at one of the greatest institutions in the land to break out and become one of the leaders in the industry. So this is going to be fascinating to keep our finger on the pulse, Dhairya, of where you go from here.
Yes, indeed, exciting times ahead. And it's been a pleasure to be on the show.
Okay. Well, let's make sure, folks, how can folks connect, if they want to compare notes with you, or they want to ask you a question about, this topic or that topic, or, compare notes, how can folks connect with you, Dhairya?
So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So folks can reach me out or message me on LinkedIn. I'm always open for a conversation, and we can mutually discuss, learn from your POV as well as my POV, and move ahead as a community.
I love that. All right, so I've got to I've got to call this out for folks that may be tuned into the video version of this podcast. Right over your left shoulder, there's a book that says Proverbs, and I've got three little pets staring at me, which is a play on, of course, Proverbs. So I love that. Look, Dhairya, I think we know that you've got a sense of humor, so I appreciate that. It's a good dad joke. And much more importantly, I've really enjoyed the last 45 minutes or so spent with you and getting to know you better and sharing your point of view and your perspective with our global community. A lot of inspiration there, and I can't wait to reconnect with you again really soon.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Scott.
All right. Well, hey, folks, we've been talking with Dhairya Patel, a supply chain planning analyst intern with a company on the move called Inquizity. And hey, if Dhairya's there, the organization's on the move. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. It's been a long time coming. Hey, on behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, we wish you all the best wherever you are. More importantly, hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed, be like Dhairya Patel. And on that note, we'll see you next time here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.